Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening, wherever you may be. However you may be listening to the show on this Wednesday, January 17th, a little past the halfway point of the year, or a little of the month, rather, not the year itself, of the month of January, and it feels every friggin' bit as cold as it should, too. We're dealing with minus 30, minus 40 wind chills out here in the Midwest. It has been a miserable week, to say the very least. Very hard on cars. Got reacquainted with a light I have not seen in quite some time, and that is my tire pressure light. And I'm just crossing fingers with it because it's too damn cold to go out there and fuss with it. So I'm hoping it goes back to normal next week when the temperatures kind of get back to above freezing. Me and Joe were just talking in the green room too. It's been consistently in the negatives for the last couple of days out here, just been brutal. And we were talking about how today it reached, I think it was a little bit warmer actually out here than it maybe by you, but we got to about 12, 13 degrees today and like a wind chill of 0. And I was telling Catherine and I was telling you just now too, I was like, it's not terrible out here. Like it's not as bad comparatively to what it's been. I can go outside without gloves today. It was actually quite an accomplishment for me, but it's been colder than hell. It's definitely been the season to stay inside for sure, to say the very least. This is punishment for having a 50-degree Christmas, I think. How are you holding up, Joe?
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, man. We've been living too good throughout December that January had to come in cold as hell, man. It had to come out swinging with its snowstorms. I luckily took Friday off because I had stuff related to school to get prepared for. I also took off Monday because that was the first day of class, and I just was like, you know what? I just want to take a look at everything. I also had to meet with my group because the last class I got to take here is a 16-week group project, basically. So I was like, I'm just going to take both days off, Friday and Monday. Friday to look over all the shit, the syllabus and everything. Monday to meet with my group and go over like basically like a plan that we want to do and everything. And I'm glad I did that because Friday, like, I woke up and my dad stayed home from work because he just couldn't like get out of the driveway. And me and him spent about 2 hours, maybe 3, shoveling out the driveway, snow plowing it. We actually got it down to where it was literally the gravel because we were just going as hard as possible in the paint, basically, trying to get this snow out of here because we were like, man, if we don't get this out of here, it's just going to build up to even higher and heavier snow when it snows later on Friday to Saturday morning.
Well, and I sympathized with the plows out here too because like it was such a perfect storm, no pun intended, that the snow fell on Friday night into Saturday, and then Saturday it got so cold that salt was virtually ineffective. And now what you're seeing, I'm sure it's like that out there too, back home, is that like parking lots and certain side streets now that have snow on them still, and they're still very slick because this shit can't melt.
Yeah, I just can't.
It can't melt at all. I saw a little bit of melting today, actually, because the sun was out. It was like 13 degrees, so there was a little bit. But no, I mean, this is like bumpy roads out here. It really sucks. You know, it's definitely been a bad stretch. And we were talking even too, these stretches, it's not that we're not used to this cold. These stretches come almost every year or every other year, but usually they're about a 3-day period. They're about a 3 to 4 day period. I think when all's said and done, this will be a solid week of sub-zero temperatures. And it's just hard. I saw they had to light the Metro right before we came on the show. I saw they had to light the Metro tracks on fire back in Chicago.
That's always my favorite, though. That's so cool to look at.
It's so cool to look at. Yeah, like it's a news story every year. I feel like they have to light the tracks on fire so the trains can run.
It's so cool to look at, but like the first time I ever saw it, I freaked out. It was like, oh my god, the train tracks are on fire.
I'm the first person to try that year, like in the 1800s. It was like when it got like, cut your arm off cold, and and it was like, well, if we light them on fire, and they'll be like, hey, Ezekiel's got an idea over here.
Yeah.
Like,
He had a better idea than the guy being like, "What if we pour hot water on the windshield of our car?"
Yeah, there was that guy. Jim Bob was like, "Well, we put hot water on the windshield. Maybe it'll work." You know, shit. That's a movie to be made right there. But we got two big topics today. Joe found this news piece last week. I think it was after the show this came out. This is crazy. We'll touch on this to end the show. And it was kind of very serendipitous too, because of the fact that we had both Dom and Joe gave scathing rants about The Exorcist Believer for our worst movies of 2023 show last week. And, well, it looks like Exorcist Deceiver is going to be in some deep shit. And so we'll touch on that. David Gordon Green has exited the project. We're going to touch on that. That's going to be a big story to round out the show. And then we also got Mean Girls, the 2024 musical Mean Girls, that we will touch on here as well. So we might as well just get started with that. No Dom today, as you can see. Guys taking a personal mental health night. We encourage that here at Sleepless with Steve. So
yeah, Steve's he'll be back the worst employer. He actually gives you personal days.
Yes, indeed. I do give some PTO. I'm a graceful boss over here. Mean Girls 2024, though. We got to touch on this movie, which was supposed to go to Paramount Plus. It was supposed to be a streaming exclusive, and it kind of looks like it too. I'm not going to lie, but let's start this off here with Mean Girls. This has been incorrectly referred to as a remake, and I see why. Especially if you've seen the movie. It feels like a remake. What this actually is, though, is not a remake of the 2004 Lindsay Lohan, Mark Waters movie. This is an adaptation of the Broadway musical. It's the same as The Color Purple. The Color Purple wasn't a remake last month. The Color Purple was an adaptation of the Tony Award-winning musical.
Yep.
So this thing really isn't a remake. The funny part is, and now they're coming out, the Paramount executives, and saying this, that they tried to bury the lead in the trailers that this was indeed a musical. And that's why I think a lot of people have been referring to it as a remake, because it was marketed like a remake. The funny thing is, I don't know if you noticed this, Joe, but, there really wasn't much singing in the trailer. They really muted the shit out of the fact that this was a musical. Yeah. And they had their reasons to do that. I'm not going to deny that.
So I knew this was a musical, I think, before anybody.
I did too.
Because, okay, good. You did too, at least.
I did too.
As one does. And I got to the movie theater to watch some trailers and everything. This was for the Taylor Swift Eras movie. And there was an exclusive trailer made for the Eras Tour movie that basically said, "Are you ready, for the next musical event?" And it played this trailer. So it let you know, oh, it's a musical adaptation.
Sure.
But when I saw, I think I went to the trailer. I think it was when I went to see Wonka or something. Something in December. Then this trailer played, and it was, devoid of anything music-related other than the musical note in the letter M or whatever it was.
Yes, that's in the letter A.
Hey, there we go.
That's what clued me into it, because when I first watched the trailer, I knew there was a musical of this thing on Broadway, and I thought to myself, just the way it was kind of stylized and everything, I'm like, is it? And then the title card appears, and there's the musical note in the title card. Yes. And I think a lot of people miss that. A lot of even avid film people miss that. Yeah. Critic I didn't even know this thing was a damn musical until he saw it. And I'm like, the note was the giveaway for me. Everybody's crucifying Paramount, though, for burying the fact that this was a musical. I kind of understand it, though. Musicals don't typically do well. And keep in mind, this was marketed before Wonka and Color Purple did well.
And I want to tell those same people, did you see the box office for In the Heights and the West Side Story remake?
Yeah, it made even some Scott Mendelson even too. I didn't read his article for the Wrap, but he was going off about how Paramount did a disservice to this thing. I'm like, you cover the fucking box office, man. You know those movies didn't do well, yeah. And you said yourself that the musical was like the kiss of death nowadays.
Yeah.
I've never understood the culture's aversion to musicals, Americans' aversion to musicals.
I think it's just some hatred towards not hatred, but just a stigma of when somebody starts singing a movie, everybody goes, because maybe they associate with kids stuff or anything, but it's man, no, some of the best movies out there, especially a golden age of film, were musicals. Singing in the Rain is one of the best films of all time, and that's a musical.
Yeah, and like In the Heights and West Side Story too. Like
Sure,
I'm
yeah,
happy
both
for
West Side Story movies actually.
I was a fan of both Wonka and The Color Purple, but I remember being really upset that those two movies, In the Heights and West Side Story, those were both on my top 10 of the year. Both of them didn't do well at all, especially In the Heights. In the Heights was a flat out disaster
Yeah.
at the box office. And I'm like, those were genuinely excellent musicals and just great movies. But Mean Girls is indeed a musical. Spoiler alert, I guess. For the easily offended. But yeah, I'm gonna say I hate reading directly from my review for Sleepless, but I have to say this because every now and then your boy comes up with a good lead paragraph, and I have to say I said if you ever wondered what Mean Girls would have been like if it had been drained of most of its edge and several of its singularly impacting scenes were interrupted by short and mostly underwhelming musical numbers, well, Paramount's gifted you your wish early enough in the year that you'll be able to forget this thing by the time the snow melts. It's I was not a fan of this thing. I rewatched. Did you get a chance to rewatch the original Mean Girls before seeing this?
I watched it last year, so I didn't watch it recently,
Oh, okay.
but I watched it last year in April or May.
Nice.
And that was before I knew anything about this even coming out. I wanted to watch it again, but I was like, I watched it so recently that I can easily remember it.
It's a great movie.
It is.
It's a great movie. Top to bottom, one of the best teen comedies of its era.
Yeah.
And the thing that struck me watching the original Mean Girls again, the week before or the week of this, was that Mean Girls is basically, and now that you want to talk about something that sounds like a pejorative, it sounds like a negative. The original Mean Girls is kind of a Saturday Night Live movie in a lot of ways. It's got a lot of the same talent. Tina Fey was an alum. Tim Meadows was an alum. Amy Poehler, Lorne Michaels is a producer, and it has that same sort of SNL skit vibe where it's like it's got that satirical bite to it. And I normally cannot stand SNL movies.
I could totally imagine like the plastics walking in, but Regina George is played by the host of SNL that week.
If you don't have to think too long and hard about it, you could have seen Mean Girls be like a series of recurring bits.
Yeah.
on SNL. It wouldn't have been as good, but you can definitely see the influence of the SNL cast, and Tina Fey wrote it.
Yeah.
I think while she was still working for SNL. So there's a lot of bleed over, I think, in the original movie. And the movie had like the right amount of sass, tenacity, sort of like a real life, albeit caricature depiction of high school. It's endlessly quotable. It was one of the most, I feel like of movies made in 2000 and beyond, it's up there with The Hangover as one of the most quotable comedies.
I can attest to this because I didn't see this movie for like the longest time. The original Mean Girls. So much so that like I basically knew the movie like the back of my hand because of how much it was quoted and referenced in pop culture. Like I always like for the longest time was like, do I really need to watch the movie? I've seen the movie through everybody else, like quoting it, showing me clips of it or anything.
It was because I saw it late. I saw it in early high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it in early high school too, and it was definitely. I think I'm lagging here a little bit. I apologize. I think I'm lagging here a little bit. Yeah, I saw it in early high school, and I had the exact same feeling you did, where I felt like I had seen the movie without having seen the movie.
Yeah,
When it comes to this one, though.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I feel like I'm lagging here. I apologize. When it comes to this one, though, Samantha Jane and Arturo Perez Jr.'s Mean Girls, though, this thing lacks a lot of the dynamic ingredients of the original movie. And to the point, too, it's made up of about 80% of the original movie's dialogue, and it overplays a lot of its musical numbers. I don't want to get into too much of my thoughts on this yet, but part of the movie using so much of the original movie's dialogue, because this new one is also written by Tina Fey, causes major problems with this thing later on. I'll get into that in a minute. What are your general thoughts?
I mean, right off the bat, I'm just going to straight out say it. I kind of feel the opposite of you. Actually, I shouldn't even put kind of in front of that. I shouldn't even say that. I do feel the opposite of you. I actually had a fun time with this movie, surprisingly. Because I will say this. The first 20 minutes had me fucking worried. Because I was like, okay, like it opens up with like a fun, like, tongue-in-cheek moment, like, oh, if you've seen the original Mean Girls, then you know how this is gonna play out. Of the characters of Janice and Damien, they're in a garage and everything, and basically the garage opens up and it takes us to Africa, like, like it's literally like a stage play, like starting the current opening, and you're going into Africa where the main character Katie's at. And that opening number was just bad, man. Like, I was just like, ooh, this is not working out. Anna Gori Rice, who was in the Spider-Man movies, the most recent ones with Tom Holland. She's also in The Nice Guys as Ryan Gosling's daughter. She's a great actress. I love seeing her in stuff I've seen in. Singing-wise, not the best. So we're opening up another musical, just like I did with Wonka, and I'm like, shit. The opening number's not really winning me here. And I was noticing what you were noticing, that the dialogue was beat by beat the same thing. I'm literally replaying the 2004 film in my head, and I'm like, yeah, this is beat by beat the same thing. It wasn't until some of the other characters come in, Janice and Damien, Regina George, those three especially, that my goggles of this is just the original with a new coat of paint, that's all it is, just started to get like a little bit washed out, because it's like, well, you know what? Those three are putting a lot into this performance that it's making me actually have a fun time with this. And later as the movie got along, I actually did start enjoying a few of the numbers. Not all of them, but just a few of them that I was like, you know what? This movie has like 6, maybe 7 songs. I walked away thinking 2 of them I didn't care for and couldn't wait for them to end. This is the most praising review. But the rest I thought were fun, especially 2 of them where I actually really enjoyed, which was a Halloween one and a one called Revenge Party that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, we're gonna be on opposite ends of the spectrum for this movie. I'm excited. I'm excited for some discourse
cool,
here.
Cool.
I'm excited for some discourse here for sure. Yeah, and Gowrie Rice is very good in this. I will say, I think she
played Katie fine singing wise. I didn't think she was that good.
No, I understand where you're coming from on that. As a performance, I think she's a pretty good Katie. I thought that she was one of the better parts of this movie too. I think she looks more like this, I think appearance-wise, she almost looks more like this innocent homeschooled kid.
Yeah, she has a more mousy, like, in the background kind of person.
Yes, like a background character that gets, like, pushed into the foreground, too.
Exactly, yeah.
I feel like I'm getting older, too, because there's a lot of these pop stars I just don't, and I'm on a friggin' pop radio station. I didn't know who Renee Rapp was going into this thing, who plays Regina George. I thought she was fine. At the same time, though, I think she plays Regina more like a villain, like more as like a cut and paste black and white villain, as opposed to like a character. I think she kind of digs her heels into the villain role a little bit too hard. And this is the core problem, I think, with this movie, is that I understand it has to be faithful to the musical, and I have not seen the musical. And Tina Fey writing this, I thought might have mitigated this a little bit. But this movie is so tethered and oftentimes a copy paste of dialogue from the original movie, which is why I'm glad I rewatched it before seeing this, in that you inevitably the mind goes back to the original movie, which a lot of us have seen dozens and dozens of times over, and it suffers by comparison. The perfect example of this is in the way some of the dialogue is delivered, in the way that and none for Gretchen Wiener's bye, or like stop trying to happen. The way those lines are delivered here, they're delivered like mic drops because you're waiting for that line. Where in the original movie, they were more one-off quips. The actors had no idea what those lines,
was going to be a big,
They had no idea how iconic those lines were going to become. Hell, fetch was the answer to a Jeopardy question yesterday too. Actually, I happened to catch. But these actors who clearly grew up watching this thing, like, they can't make the lines their own. They just can't. They're set up for failure because the script is a carbon copy. And then you also get like this PC dialogue in it too. And I'm not trying to be the anti-woke film critic over here, but you get there's a perfect example.
Go ahead. I know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
It's Regina's line. It's one of a couple examples, but it's just the one I caught because I'd seen the movie again so recently, is when Regina says you can't join mathletes, that's social suicide in the original. In the new one, she says that's socially ruinous. And I'm like fucking Regina George would know the word ruinous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And know to use it in casual conversation in the hallway. Like, that was another thing that bothered me with this movie. I understood they couldn't say the R word. There was a couple times in the original Mean Girls where they say the R word.
Yeah.
They couldn't say that in this. I wasn't expecting that. But I'm like, come on. I'm like, there's an element of this that feels way too squeaky clean here. Where's the meanness? Where's the meanness in Mean Girls?
So again, like, to play devil's advocate here, and also like my point of view and everything is like, going back to your point about the original lines being repeated and everything. I think that just comes with the territory of this being a musical adaptation, because a lot of these musical adaptations of movies like Mean Girls, these early 2000 things that went to either off Broadway or became Broadway hits. Like, I saw Evil Dead the musical. That thing is, yeah, I mean, you're waiting for stuff to, even though it's called Evil Dead the Musical, there's a lot of quotes from Evil Dead 2 in that musical. You're waiting for these things, and they say it, and the audience goes, yay, and everything, because they said the line and whatnot. I think it's just going to be that way because, like, hey, it is the musical adaptation of this, so we have to have this in there. And like I said, for a while it was bothering me, but eventually, I don't know if it was just like people were winning me over with their performances, or maybe just like I was like, okay, you know what? I'm in here for another hour and 10. I'm either gonna ride with this thing, or I gotta like and set aside my original like bias towards that film of the 2004 film and ride with this new one. And just something went over me that I was like, okay, you know what? I don't mind when she says, "Oh, that's so fetch. Oh, stop making fetch happen. You can sit with us today. Oh, you know, we wear pink on Wednesdays, all this stuff." There was all that stuff that I was just kind of like, okay, yeah. Or, you know, like even when Tim Meadows goes, "Oh, hell no," like, you know, he like shouts it out in the hallway and everything. I did miss that he didn't get into a tank top and grab a baseball bat, though. I was kind of sad about that. For me, what was I gonna say here? Oh yeah, the whole PC thing. I get what you're saying, because yes, this movie in some ways is missing a bit of that meanness factor to it that was in that original. But like I kind of look at it as, all right, yeah, this is today's high school, and as much as you could say like Regina wouldn't know that word, what I don't even know what the fuck she said either. Ruinous. As much as like I could totally see, it's just like you see that if someone says that on TikTok because they're around your age, or tweets that because they're around your age, and that's it, that becomes like the new way of saying it for kids in high school today and everything. I talk to kids like, because like, I have friends who have like brothers and sisters who are in high school, and it's just like, man, some shit comes out of my mouth and like, you really shouldn't say that today. I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, man. Am I really doing this right now?
It's more indicative of the target audience of this movie.
Absolutely,
not being able to differentiate portrayal from endorsement.
Yeah,
that's what it is. That's what it is, because everything is picked apart and deemed offensive on social media and everything. The target audience for this Mean Girls movie can't differentiate the fact that like just because it's being shown in a movie doesn't mean it's being endorsed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, or being condoned in a way.
Now I do want to say something though. You said like Renee Rapp, you felt like played like a black and white version of Regina, where she was just more villainous. What would you say about her performance? Okay.
Yeah. I felt she wasn't as dynamic as Regina in the original. I thought, and I mean, it's hard to replace Rachel McAdams, but I felt I felt Renee Rapp was more cast because she has a voice like Billie Eilish.
Maybe we just see both these films, just different ways.
I love it. We need to.
But like the original Mean Girls, to me, where is she? There she is. Okay, hold on, let me move this way. Her right here, Rachel McAdams as Regina George, to me is just straight out villainous in that movie, and I love her for that. I think she's like, and there is dynamic to her character, but I think like she is just straight like, you know, it's all the things that Janice is warning you know, Lindsay Lohan, Katie in the original. It's everything. It's like all this stuff. She's like this and this. For me here, Regina at least had a bit more, especially after like, you know, the big incident. You know, for those of you who haven't seen Mean Girls, I almost want to spoil it, but like what happens to Regina, there's even a conversation that Katie and Regina have in a bathroom that I feel like kind of shows like, yeah, Regina's not all that heartless. In fact, like she's like coming around now. And like, you know, it's moments like that I thought like, okay, this Regina, like she is a bitch, but not entirely like evil or like manipulative like Rachel McAdams came across to me. Now, I think Rachel McAdams gave the better performance and was the better Regina, but I still think Renee Rapp, especially singing wise too, did a good job playing Regina. And if you didn't know this as well, she played Regina George in the original run. Okay, good, you do. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I didn't know that. I found that out literally yesterday when reading through like trivia pages for this to get ready for the show, and that's when I found out this was originally gonna go to Paramount. I'm like, okay, I agree with you on that. It definitely looks like a direct-to-streaming movie. The look of this film does look cheap. And also that Renee Rapp was the original Regina George.
Now I'll say this too. Now I'm not saying this movie's as bad as this movie because it's not. The one I'm going to bring up now is downright harmful. But I use it as an example in terms of the music, in terms of the musical numbers themselves. I thought Mean Girls has about as forgettable musical numbers as Dear Evan Hansen. Like, I do. Now they're slightly better. Yeah. They're slightly better, but I don't feel this movie doesn't have a definitive song or a memorable song for me. I think the one that will have the most staying power is Avantika's "Sexy." I think that will have the most staying power.
Yeah,
the Halloween party song.
That one was a great song. Like that one gave me the most laughs. Had the best choreo and the best like costumes along
it earned the one major laugh for me. I did chuckle a few times in this thing, but the biggest laugh I got is the line in the song, "This is modern feminism talking, watch me as I run the world in shoes I cannot walk in."
Yeah, that was good.
That's a bar.
I love all that.
That's a bar.
You could be a sexy Eleanor Roosevelt. I busted out laughing when I saw that at the party. I was
the choreography is good.
Yeah.
The choreography is good. I don't find the songs particularly memorable, though. I'm also not a fan of like the Baroque pop stylings that like Regina Rapp sort of delivers.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I never have been really. I'm not the biggest Billie Eilish fan. I'm not the biggest Adele fan.
Okay, all right.
I'm not big on the Baroque pop scene. I find it very maudlin, and that's why I don't think Rapp, like, her singing voice is great. It's strong. It's powerful. But I didn't connect. It didn't connect for me.
See, okay, so yeah, two artists you just mentioned there, and again, this could just be the difference just because of just taste in music. That probably just differentiates. Maybe that's why a lot of people don't like musicals, is that they just can't get behind the genre sometimes of music that it's playing. I like Billie Eilish. I love Adele. So it's like, when we get to Regina's song, are you talking about the one at the Halloween party as well that she sings to Aaron?
Yes.
I thought that was one of the good ones. It's not the best one. It's not one that's really too memorable either. But I thought that was good. I will agree with you though, that I walked away from this going, other than those two songs, Revenge Party and Sexy, I'm really not going to remember a lot of these musical numbers. And then I can't imagine anybody playing it at a party for any reason or doing karaoke versions of it. I so much so went and listened to the Broadway soundtrack of it, and I'm actually surprised one song especially, I should say, just called Plastics, that basically introduces you to each of the plastics, wasn't in the movie. And that song is
shocking.
It's shocking because to me, that would have been the core song in the movie that everybody walked away from going, okay, we identify this song as the Mean Girls song because it does such a great job bringing in those characters. So I'm actually surprised, if anything, as an adaptation of the Broadway musical, this is lacking in some areas there. Now, I didn't see the Broadway musical, so I'm not going to ding it for points for that. But going back and going through Spotify and listening, okay, wait, what the hell? There's actually a song called Plastics, and it's introducing them. And I'm like, oh, shit, why wasn't this in the actual movie then?
And the movie just kind of throws us into the plastics to begin with here.
It kind of does, yeah.
There's instances where it's it relies on your knowledge, and I understand why it does this, because fans of you're likely not going to see the Mean Girls musical adaptation if you haven't seen
exactly,
the original
yeah.
movie. I understand that, but there's also an element of introduction that feels missing with the plastics here.
Yeah.
And I think I'm amazed that they left that song on the cutting room floor. The goddamn thing's already 2 hours long. What's another 5 minutes if they had to throw that in? Sure. I think that could have been, they left a definitive number on the floor.
Honestly, yeah, I would have just made this 2 hours even just to include that song and get that in there.
There's one element of this. I almost want to cut to break now. There's a big part of this movie that pissed me off though. There's a big part of this movie that pissed me off. All right. And I don't know what Tina Fey was thinking when she rewrote the third act in this way. I don't understand why she did it the way that she did it.
Okay.
And I think that it sucked the air out of the movie to the point where, especially having rewatched the original Mean Girls so recently and remembering like how powerful this one scene is, for her to remix it in such a way like this, I feel like bastardized this movie in a big way. We will get into that. How's that for a tease? We'll get into that.
I'm even curious.
After the intermission here, the Zoom sponsored intermission, we're going to come on back, give our kind of wrap up thoughts on Mean Girls, and then dive into what the hell is going on with The Exorcist Deceiver with David Gordon Green exiting the project. We'll be back in about 60 to 90 seconds. Don't go anywhere. It's Wednesday night. It's Sleepless Night live on YouTube. Back and better than ever, it is Sleepless with Steve. Back from our Zoom-sponsored intermission, we are talking Mean Girls. Now, I left on quite a tease there before we hit intermission over here, and it is about the third act of this movie, which I will lightly spoil in regards of the original movie. One thing that bothered the hell out of me about this movie is that how Tina Fey remixes the mathlete scene. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, by doing so, she changes the gymnasium scene, which therefore changes the mathlete scene. Tina Fey gave herself Katie's revelatory monologue in the movie. Tina Fey is the one in this movie who gives the big speech, calling someone fat won't make you skinny, and that whole monologue that Katie has to realize while faced with the sudden death round of the Mathletes tournament here. So by giving Tina Fey that line, you don't have the impact of the Mathletes scene. And Katie is robbed of the realization that gives the entire movie the purpose in the first place, which is what she's realized based on the damage she's done. And that, I think, is a big problem here with I don't know why they remixed that line in the movie and why Tina Fey gave that to herself. She already knows that. She's the adult. It's Katie who has to and everybody else who has to figure that out.
Okay. You got me there. I didn't think about that. And I think man, you rewatched it recently, so I'm wondering if I would have done the same if I would have been noticing all this kind of stuff.
I don't know if I would have if I hadn't rewatched it soon, but Katie says that it's an internal monologue scene in the mathlete scene.
You know what? You're right. You're right, because she thinks about this, and that's what causes the other person to answer before her. In this movie, it's played out differently, where Katie's just trying to be nice to the other person verbally, and the person just takes advantage of that and answers before her. But we know how this all plays out. The thing is zero, and whatnot. That's actually a good point. I didn't think about it like that. And again, it just totally went over my head that that's not how that played out. It was just more like, okay, this is Katie having her redemption here and everything. But you're totally right that the inner monologue she has while pretending to solve the answer at the mathletes thing. That's definitely. Yeah, it's definitely not there. I'm actually surprised I didn't even catch that.
Because and then it leads into the perfect segue in that scene when Katie says, all you can do is answer the problem, try to solve the problem in front of you.
Yeah.
And then she answers the question.
Yeah.
Where in this movie, I think the reason, if any justification is given to the reason why Tina Fey gave herself that line, is to make room for Katie's song in the sudden death round.
I guess
but
so,
still,
yeah.
It doesn't hit as hard. It doesn't hit as hard because that's the whole goddamn point of the movie is we've all been bullied. We've all been bullies. We are our own problem.
And and looking at the musical numbers from the musical itself, it's just something I guess that when you're adapting the source material like this, you have to think okay, well, we have to make this part a musical number. We can't have anybody think to themselves, during a musical stage play. I mean, maybe you could. I don't know how you would do it. Have a solo spotlight on them and everything. But, it would probably be the best way to do a musical. I will give some of the things that I did like about this movie, though. I do credit Steve's point there for the third act, is the comedy of this movie. I actually think this movie, with its new comedy and some of the jokes that do repeat, is actually really good. And it's mainly due to two people. It's mainly due to Karen, who gets a bit more screen time here than the original did, which was played by Amanda. God damn it, I keep pointing in the wrong direction, which is played by Amanda Seyfried. She gets way more time here and a lot better jokes, I think, for that character. They play up that she's really dumb and everything, but I really like that they did more with her character. I also love what they did with Damien in this movie. Damien has, to me, two of the best jokes in this movie. One involves his talent show part. The other involves a thing he's driving in a cul-de-sac. And if you know the original film, you know what I'm talking about. But they just do something different here that caught me off guard and had me busting out laughing. I thought those two brought in a lot of laughs, and those characters really played those two actors played the characters very well, and a very hard role to fit into. All these roles are very hard to play again. I do think I'm gonna butcher her name here, but Louis Caraval, who plays the new Janice, I think she did very good. In fact, if you want to I think acting wise and singing wise, she did the best with that character. I think she performed the character the best, and she sang the character the best as well. Where with Allegory Rice, I feel like acting wise she was great, but singing wise she wasn't. And Renee Rapp, I thought Renee Rapp, I will throw that both in there. But trying to compete with Regina George is just no competition. Rachel McAdams did way better. But with Janice, I thought she came into her own with that character. The returning characters of Tina Fey and Tim Meadows, I thought they were good too. They don't do anything too different from them other than a little thing at near the end of the movie during the whole part where all the girls are admitting what they've done to each other and everything that's ending up in the burn book. They do like a little tease that like, oh, they've, I won't actually ruin it, never mind. But I did like what they did there. Other than a few scenes that just made me roll my eyes, because it's like, okay, they have to do this because it's in the original. Like the scene, for instance, I was just talking about it, but the scene in the gymnasium where all the girls are admitting to their friends or to somebody that they were talking behind their back and everything. When we got to the point where it's like the girl's crying, and then she's like, I just want us to be friends like we were back in, like, elementary school and everything. And then, like, Damien goes, she doesn't even go here. In the original, that's hilarious and everything. In the remake, or this adaptation, it just comes across as like, okay, yeah, we just have to hit this note because it's the Mean Girls musical. And I don't know, I rolled my eyes at that because it's like, do we really have to do, like, every joke? Could we have done something different? Steve?
I'm back.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
back.
okay. I heard you make like some noise, and I'm like, I didn't know if you were trying to like intervene or something or say something.
Continue your thought.
No, yeah, no. So I was going on. I don't know if you were listening in. I was just going on that like what kind of saved this movie for me, because it wasn't really the music. To me, it was the comedy. I was laughing a lot throughout this, and I got like a few good laughs out of it. It sucks to hear you didn't feel the same way, but there was just something about this movie. It just kind of charmed me over that I was like, okay, I'm at least getting a few good laughs in here. And I was saying that specifically the characters of Damien and Karen are better.
Are better?
No, not better. Hold on, I'm sorry. I got distracted here. Hold on a second.
You're fine.
Okay. I got my mail. Like, that's why.
Oh, I see.
No,
serviceable, yeah.
No,
I would say better.
They're not. No one in this movie. I'll say this right now. No one in this movie I thought was better. I either thought they were as good or serviceable, like you're saying. Like I think Janice in this movie was as good as Janice in the original. Same with Damien and same with Karen. Actually, like Karen to me here, I like what they did with Karen's character more here. It wasn't really the actress that like added more. It's like the fact they gave her more to actually do than just be dumb. And I think it just helped she had the musical number, and even like the more dumb scenes she had, I like some of those jokes that they did with her. Like the whole scene where like, they're like accusing all the girls and she's like, I demand a trial, or like whatever the hell it was and everything. There was just more to me here that they did with her character. I don't know, like you're comparing like the ideal dumb character to another ideal dumb character, and it's like I just felt like, hey, they did a bit more with the dumb character here, but that's just me.
I would say this is a movie brought back, or a story brought back for the sole purpose of bringing it back. I think this belongs on Paramount Plus. It would fit right in my opinion, with Good Burger 2 and Zoe 102.
Yeah.
I think it fits right in with that wheelhouse over here of like these middling, these sort of middling like readaptations, reimaginings of older properties here too. I wasn't moved by this really at all, quite frankly. Did you give your star rating, or are we waiting for me?
No, I was waiting for you.
I'll give mine right here. I give it 1.5 out of 4.
Woo, shit! All right.
This is probably our most dissenting Sleepless review.
Yeah, no,
in a while.
Because most of the time, like we're maybe like a half star off or something. Like we're not like too different. For me, damn, this is gonna sound crazy. For me, this is 3 out of 4 stars for me. It was
Wow.
enjoyable. It was enjoyable enough. Like the original is like almost like a 4-star perfect movie for me. Like of like that time. Like it's just like of like a comedy from that time and everything. I think that is a 4-star film. I think it's a timeless classic and everything. It's so damn well written. This to me as an adaptation of that musically, I think it did good enough. I expected better from it, especially when we have Tina Fey writing the same thing. But I then look back and I'm like, okay, the writing for me, other than what you pointed out about that third act, that's going to stick with me for a while now. Other than when you pointed about that third act, I thought the writing was fine. It's the music, which she had nothing to do with, really. It's, the other writers that did the musical book for this, that like are here, that I'm just like, okay, you know what? Not everything was hitting, and it could have been better. I'm actually really curious. I know it's not on Broadway anymore or really touring anywhere anymore, but damn, I really want to find a recording of the original Broadway musical and just do a comparison of this to that and see like, okay, was it really like a good, like faithful adaptation in terms of like, was it really using the same lines, all this stuff, or did this really go off on its own path and the musical is like way better in every way?
Yeah, this goes back to our debate on like when we watched Hamilton years ago,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think that was almost 4 years ago. But like people were pissed about that because it was like taking like the theater experience out of it and trying to make it like a movie. But man, I've said before, like as somebody who is pro accessibility
Mhm.
and has always been pro accessibility when it comes to movies and other different works and everything, it really sucks that I feel like for a large faction of the population of America, musicals are just inaccessible. Like these big musical productions, like some of the biggest of Hamilton and the Book of Mormon,
Yeah.
a lot of them. And let me tell you, living in Iowa too, like living in Iowa now, believe me, I'm even more sympathetic to this issue and stuff. It would be nice to find a copy of Mean Girls, like a recorded copy that was even edited in just some ways to look like a feature movie, the stage production itself.
And like that's the thing too, is like even though I did like this movie, I don't want more movies like this where it's the musical adaptation, it's the film adaptation of the musical adaptation of an original film. I don't want more of these, like, because we got lucky with The Color Purple being as good as it was.
You saw that?
No, but I've heard like very good things. I'm going to go see it this weekend.
It's very good.
I'm playing catch up this weekend.
I get it. It's very good.
But with this, I mean, like, I liked it, and this has been, I've seen it on both sides of the spectrum here. I've seen people in your camp, and I've seen people in my camp with this movie. Hold on, let me rephrase that. I've seen people on like that shared the same thoughts as you and share the same thoughts as mine. It felt weird just saying my camp like that quick. Yeah. I was just like, wait, what? So I like. It's so weird. It doesn't mean I want to see more of these things, even though like two of them so far, at least for me, have been positive. Because like sooner or later we're just gonna like run the well on these things, and it's gonna be like, okay, like we're just running course now of, okay, let's do now the musical adaptation, let's do the movie adaptation of the Evil Dead musical that's based on the original. It's like, no, I don't want more of these. If you want to do these, do what Hamilton did with Disney Plus, honestly. Maybe that should have been the Paramount Plus thing, was a recording of the stage play being performed like that, because I love what they did on Disney Plus. Like honestly too, I know they want to do a film adaptation of Hamilton. To me, there's no fucking point when you have that on Disney Plus.
No, there's not. There really isn't. After that was so good,
Yeah,
for what it was. You know what I mean? And you felt like you even got some of the musical experience in that movie. It was so craftily edited,
yeah,
and everything like that. Where this almost feels like costume dress up. It almost feels like, this sounds really bad, but this feels like the Glee version of Mean Girls.
You know what? And you say that. And some of the people I know that like this movie said this was Glee on crack. And I was just like, all right, well, there you go.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. It's not as bad as Rocky Horror Glee, though. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. We'll move forward. We'll talk about our news bit here. It feels like a while since we've had news on the show, just because of our year-end wrap-up shows the last couple of weeks. But we have to touch on this. I feel like this is one of the biggest.
Off me now.
Proud of you. I feel like this is one of the biggest stories that I feel like is even getting underplayed in a way with how huge this whole thing is. David Gordon Green's The Exorcist Believer came out last year. Famously, it was included as the #1 worst film on Joe's worst of 2023 list.
Yeah.
None of us liked it. None of us really cared for it. Didn't make my list ultimately, but it's not a good movie, which is a damn shame, because we were all most of us were ardent defenders of Green's Halloween trilogy, especially the reviled Halloween Ends, which people will slowly come around to how great that movie was. But
I hope so.
The Exorcist was like Blumhouse having fun with the riches that they made from Halloween. They acquired the Exorcist franchise, Blumhouse and Universal, for $400 million for a trilogy, which was already an asinine amount of money to pay for this thing, because the Exorcist sequels in the past, like Dominion and everything, they were not big money makers. They really weren't. Even relative to the time, they weren't. Then now it's at the time period too where exorcism movies, I feel like, are played out significantly. I think what you're getting now too, especially from Blumhouse, which is weird to me that like Blumhouse wanted to go this route, was that Blumhouse was showing like in a lot of ways there's more to horror than exorcisms and the religiosity of horror movies. So when they made this move, I'm like, man, they really are having fun with all the money they made off of Halloween. They're going to try to do it again and catch lightning in a bottle twice. Well, Exorcist Believer did all right. The problem is when you pay 400 million for a trilogy or for the rights, any amount of money that you get that isn't like record shattering is going to seem like a bomb. And it really wasn't. The Exorcist Believer was a fairly successful theatrical movie. In terms of monetarily speaking, it was one of the lowest rated movies of the year, though, from a critical consensus. I think it's in the teens on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
It's not a good movie at all. And it set a shaky foundation for the future installments. And now there's a huge blow to this thing because the next movie, The Exorcist Deceiver, which was already dated to be released on April 18th, 2025, is now taken off the release schedule because David Gordon Green will no longer be directing it.
Yeah.
And I think they bought this franchise. I mean, you don't pay $400 million without like a calculated plan. They bought the rights to this franchise with the assumption that Green was going to direct all three of them like he did the Halloween movies. But now, according to the Hollywood Reporter, Gordon Green is exiting Deceiver because he's busy working on the feature film called Nutcrackers and The Righteous Gemstones, which he's also the big showrunner on that show as well too. He's one of the creators.
Great show, by the way.
Really good show. But man, it's bad when the director of your $400 million property is ditching you to direct a movie called Nutcrackers. Like, I'm like, man, only Gordon Green can have as much range next to Linklater as far as American directors are. But the problem, too, is that Believer, you already are going uphill because Believer technically underperformed monetarily relative to the expectations Blumhouse had, and it didn't really set the series on a great ground to begin with. Yeah. Now you lose your visionary. Now you lose the guy that you were banking on to bring this thing home. This shocked me when you sent this news to the group chat, like so soon after the show too. This floored me because I would have thought I mean, yeah, you have the right to exit a project and everything, but that even tells me I feel like there's more to this story that hasn't broken yet because I don't think Green leaves this movie with the payday he would receive. I don't think he leaves this movie if he had faith in the direction or if he had faith in what he was making.
I mean, like, and you can clearly see he had faith in what he was doing with the Halloween movies because he stuck around for all three, and those are controversial movies only because like of what they decided to do with the sequels. Everybody feels the same roughly, like, you know, it's a general consensus that the first one in 2018 that he made is generally like regarded as a good movie. A lot of people like it. It's the sequels with each one especially that you get more of a divide between fans of Halloween, if like, you know, like people like it or people hate it. And that last one, I mean, like that last one, he caught some stray bullets with that one.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I mean, it was like Rob Zombie's Halloween all over again.
Yeah, and like, you know, for me, it was like, you know, I shouldn't even say for me, for us three and a few friends I know too. Like we were just like, I mean, we kind of liked what he did with it. It was something different with this franchise. Here, that's what, like, you know, sucked about this movie, and like I didn't mention it too much the other day when we did our war stuff, but I mentioned our review. He did something different with Halloween. He didn't, I shouldn't say he, I mean, it was the same team and everything he worked with here that he did the Halloween movies with, but that whole team, they did something different with Michael Myers. They did a whole new approach, and they did something unique to that I can look at that trilogy and say, you know what, they did 3 movies, it felt unique, they got in, they got out. They didn't do like fucking Return of Michael Myers, The Curse of Michael Myers, H2O, all that stuff. It's like, no, they did something actually unique. With The Exorcist Believer, there wasn't anything unique about that movie. No. It was just another Exorcist movie. And you're also, I mean, shit, you're going up an uphill battle already. Like, you can look at Halloween and it's like, okay, the original Halloween is a Halloween horror movie classic, but it's not like The Exorcist. The Exorcist is like a film classic. Like even if you're not a horror fan, people put that on their like best of lists. Like of all time, like, because that's how good of a movie it is.
And it's often referred to, one of the best and worst things about it is it's often referred to as the scariest movie of all time.
Yeah.
And everything like that, which was great for its legacy, but also very detrimental to it because I feel like younger people who see it, like who didn't see it when it came out or saw it before the internet existed and it became this sort of cultural thing.
Yeah.
Like went into it like scare me movie. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's aged, but it's still an amazing gothic movie.
Oh yeah, it is. I love that movie.
To film on a filmmaking level too.
Yeah. Like, So, you get to this new one, and it's hitting, and we said this in our review, it's hitting the tropes of every exorcism movie you see out there. Even when it's not an exorcism movie, anything that deals with demons or just horror movies in general, it's hitting all those tropes. And it just sucked because, like, we got something so unique with what they did before, and then we get to here, and it's like, well, what the hell is the vision? And we already said too, when you look at the legacy character of Laurie Strode compared to when they brought in Ellen, it's like, dude, why? Why did you even waste your time doing this?
I go back, and this quote's often attributed to Bob Dylan. I've said it before on the show. It's often attributed to Bob Dylan. I don't know if he actually said it. There's been some discrepancy. It's just such a great line. I should probably look in to see if I can track down the actual author of this quote. But the Exorcist felt like one of my all-time favorite quotes. It's more in the regard to music, but it still applies, is that you get your entire life to write your first album and 8 months to write your second.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, I think, with The Exorcist, is I think Danny McBride and David Gordon Green sat down and they talked about the Halloween movies for years.
Yeah.
Like they probably watched all of them together.
They also had COVID to like kind of like fine tune some things too.
They did, and they had because you had the delay with the latter two sequels. They had time on their side because it wasn't a rush. They were conceptualizing this and like, okay, we're gonna bring Jamie Lee Curtis back. What is Laurie Strode going to look like in this movie?
Yeah.
How can we tether these movies through this timeline where you could realistically watch them in a row and it feels like an even bigger complete movie? The Exorcist, the problem was that after Halloween Ends came out, The Exorcist was announced. And then you basically had 12 months that you had to come up with not only, and it wasn't, and again, what do we always say is one of the problems too with studios, is now with the success of the MCU and the DC universe, I guess not, to a far lesser degree, I should say. I should add. But with the success of shared universe movies, is that these studios plan for 5-6 movies before they can make one good movie. And that's the problem they had with The Exorcist here, is I think they backed Green into a corner. They gave him a blank check. And of course, you're going to take it. You're not guaranteed another, you know what I mean? You're not guaranteed another movie in Hollywood. There's very few people who are. And the situation then was, we got to come up, I got to come up with a trilogy, and then I got to come up with the foundation to it too. Yeah. And that's why you get a mess like The Exorcist Believer, is that it wasn't refined like Halloween. Regardless of what you feel like with the Halloween movies, you can, the new ones, whatever you feel like, you can at least adhere to the fact that Green had a clear-cut vision, and McBride, because I always forget to mention Danny McBride with those movies too. They had a vision for what they wanted to do. The Exorcist, they didn't have really any time to come up with a vision, especially really not one that was elaborate as what they did for Halloween.
And that's the thing, like, that's like, why, like, I let those movies, like the Halloween movies, I give them so much credit because it felt like, I actually, like, you can hate all you want, but you can't deny, like, there was a vision here because, like, they did something, not only with Laurie Strode, they did something with the town. They did something with Havenfield. And, like, what they eventually did with, like, just the idea of Michael Myers itself in the third movie. With The Exorcist, like, maybe that's the thing is, like, you don't have, like, it's not like Jamie Lee Curtis or Laurie Strode. But then again, that movie that now it gets into the whole franchise where it connects webbing thing. That like the 2018 movie is a sequel to the original. So hold on, never mind what I'm about to say there. But I will say this: like you have a location, Havenfield, so you have like already like how this can play out. Laurie still lives there. The town has moved on, but she hasn't. How do you apply that same idea of like coming in and being the sequel to the original, but like you don't have a Havenfield with The Exorcist, like in everything. It's not like they're going back to the original house in this or anything. I mean, you have like, the whole religion aspect of itself, but, it's like even when they tried to do that in this movie, it wasn't that good because they just were so hung up on doing horror movie tropes. I will say, seeing that the movie was called The Exorcist Deceiver, I think I was already kind of getting where they were going with in terms of a sequel by the end of Believer, which was, it was the dad that lost his daughter was going to become like almost like the kind of like become following the Antichrist more than actual Catholicism and like where that goes. And like that sounds already like a better sequel and everything. In fact, I really wish they would have kickstarted right there. It's just like, why not have an Exorcist movie where there's an exorcism being performed and the dad loses his daughter and it makes him question his faith from there. Because it seemed like they wanted to do that with Believer, but they just didn't.
No, I completely agree. This is shocking, though,
Yeah.
that like it's just completely removed now from the release calendar. So this thing might perish.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna have to
They might
find.
do a gun for hire because I imagine
There probably are.
Jason Blum is probably gonna look at this and be like, look, I can give you 10 million, we'll make 30 million at least opening weekend or something. We can easily make this back. Like, that's all that matters to him sometimes when it comes to movies is like, give it a small budget, it's gonna make it back no matter what. Whether we
It's
break
not
even.
a Scream 7 situation either, where
No.
it's like you lost two pillars of the cast, or at least what the path you were trying to continue with this thing,
Yeah.
and then you lost Christopher Landon because Landon was fed up with the whole damn thing. It's not that. You lost your director, but like you said now, they're going to probably hire a gun for hire. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised because they just released, like he just had his movie like 2 weeks ago. I wouldn't be surprised. The name to keep an eye on over here, and this is me like acting like an insider when I have no sources. You know what would be a name I would keep an eye on though is Bryce McGuire, the guy who directed and wrote Night Swim.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
this seems like the logical jump. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? He's in house. He's brand new. He had a fairly decent successful outing with Night Swim,
Yeah.
and he's proven to be something of a young visionary director.
Yeah.
And they try to give these guys, their next big break,
was
like a
able to work with
franchise.
great actors like Russell Wyatt and everything. So like, he got to command him on screen and everything. So he could take somebody like, if they bring back someone like Leslie Odom Jr. He's worked with young actors like that before who are growing and like can make a name for themselves.
Yeah, like you just said too. Yeah, he worked with young cast members and older ones and established ones in Night Swim.
Yeah.
I would keep an eye on that because it feels like also too because Jason Blum is really smart. If you
Yeah.
follow him on Twitter, wickedly smart
He
dude.
is, yeah.
Really great interviewer too, or really great interview subject too. Just an interesting dude all around. But with this movie though, I feel like this is the time. I think if Blum's in a pinch, I think this is the time to offer this to McGuire and be like, I think you're ready. That would be my guess. Would be my guess.
I'll throw you another curveball here. This is gonna go from a rated R rating to a PG-13, and they're gonna release it again in October, like they did with this one, because high schoolers will go see this with their friends or with their girlfriends
That's an
around
interesting
Halloween
point.
time, like they do with almost any of these Blumhouse Halloween movies. Just like, just to be in the spirit of things and everything.
That's an interesting point. I could see that because they're like you said, they're already kind of up Schitt's Creek with this thing, and the movies aren't making as much money.
What was so rated R about this one, really?
That would be such a rat bastard move, but that would absolutely be something they would do is make the new one PG-13 because and also too they have the Five Nights at Freddy's argument as well.
Oh shit, that's it. It's sold.
It wouldn't be as successful as that. I don't
dude.
think.
If 2025 I have to sit through Exorcist Deceiver and Five Nights at Freddy's 2, I'm gonna fucking go insane. Saw 7.
PG-13.
Saw 7. Saw 11. Please come, man.
Yeah, what a wild story though. I couldn't believe that. I'm proud of David Gordon Green. I've expressed on this show before.
No, I'm glad he's out of it too because like look, your reputation.
It wasn't going to help his legacy.
Yeah. Your reputation's already being hurt because people didn't like the Halloween movies. We did, but we're not everybody. We just have better taste than everybody.
Yes.
But like continuing down this path was not going to be a good one either. If you were going to go through another horror trilogy and just get even more people pissed off, yeah, it was not going to help.
And at least the Halloween trilogy had its defenders, and if especially for the first one, had its supporters. Where this, like,
they should have sent him to director's jail, honestly.
The Exorcist Believer, like this was a miss, like a complete miss for on all levels, critics and audiences. I'm really interested to see who they tap for this now. I'm really interested to see who they get. Like, I think it's going to be a younger director who maybe doesn't have. I mean, hell, it could be the woman who directed what's her name, Emma Tammy, the woman who directed Five Nights at Freddy's. They have these young directors in their pipeline that are kind of looking for their next big break, and I think this could be logical for some of them.
Look, and I will say this. If it comes and they actually find somebody, I'm rooting for the fucking movie because the last thing I want to do is sit through another Exorcist 100%. Believer. I do not want to sit through another Exorcist Believer. I'd rather sit through something like Exorcist 3 or, The Last Exorcism of Mary Rose, like something like that where it's like, okay, this is good or serviceable.
And it's too damn bad William Peter Blatt, the guy who wrote The Exorcist 3 and wrote the book, it's too damn bad he's dead.
Yeah.
It's too, because, man, Catherine and I watched The Exorcist 3 over
sequel.
Halloween. That is a great sequel. That is a great movie.
Yeah.
Like, I was blown away by how well done that thing was.
Yeah, that opening jump
Watch that
scare.
one.
Oof.
Highly recommend if you haven't seen The Exorcist 3.
Yeah, anybody who says like there's no good Exorcist sequels, it's like no. Go watch 3. Exorcist 3 is actually good.
You skip 2. You skip 2 because it did. Because it did. That's our show tonight. Great show as always. Looking forward to next week's show. As I trying to remember too off the top of my head.
I don't think we're reviewing anything. I think we're going on with the Oscar nominations.
That's right. It's the Oscar nominations. That's right.
That's why I'm playing catch up this weekend because I'm like, oh good, I have nothing to go to the theater for.
That's why I couldn't think of what movie we're reviewing next week, because we're not reviewing a movie. We're talking the Oscar nominations. They drop at 7 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday. They always do that really shitty video with two random people, and I'm like half awake. I'll be in the radio studio watching that and taking notes and jotting down notes and stuff like that. So we will touch on the Oscar nominations on next week's show, a week from today. We will be back. Dom will be back. It'll be a great show. Always look forward to it. Appreciate you doing what you do, man. You came with your A game today for the review of the first movie of 2024 on this show. We'll be back next week. Highlights be posted on this very YouTube channel that you are viewing this right now. For Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon in spirit, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.